And we're going to get on to session number 3, which, as you know from your program, is sustainable tourism. We're going to go right ahead. You know the format. We're going to bring up our contestants on stage, let them get comfortable, and then we'll announce introduce the introductory speaker. So from Spain, Aranjuez, we have Maria del Pozo Lopez. Please join us on stage. We have, now, I've been practicing this. My pronunciation is way off. Zamosh, from Poland. Zamosh. We have, and then I have to, the name. Boguslav Smigan. There we go. Thank you for the names. I'm sorry about this. Then we have from Visby, Sweden. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I live in Sweden. I live in Stockholm. Visby is near and dear to my heart. We have 2 people representing Visby, Helene Neguisse and Monica Frisk. Please also take the stage. Varsågod. And now, I'm going to introduce our kickoff star for this session. Jyoti, that's as I'm familiar with, and again, another last name I'm having trouble with is Hosagrahar. I hope I got that right. Please come up. This is the Deputy Director for the World Heritage Center at UNESCO. If you've had a chance in your program to look at her biography, chances are you're still probably reading it because it goes on and on and on with one of the most impressive lists of degrees and accomplishments that I've ever seen. From architecture to urban planning, initiatives on cultural heritage. We are so fortunate to have with us one of the world's foremost experts today. Please join me for a warm welcome. Jyoti, where are you? Come on up. Here he is.
Thank you for that kind introduction. Well, I'm very happy to be back here today. And today I'll be talking a bit about, I'm going to be talking about sustainable tourism and the historic urban landscape. I can progress it myself here. That's very good. So when we think about World Heritage, we think about perhaps dreamy places that we can go to, the idealized history that we can visit. But what does it really mean to be in World Heritage places? For more than 3,800 years, the Great Pyramids of Giza were the tallest man-made structures in the world. But today, travelers bemoan that the Giza pyramids can be seen from Pizza Huts that are around it, and that there is chaos and noise that's around of the city around. The reality of tourism then is what is starting to take over, and this is what we're seeing in many places. And I'm not going to name all of these places that you're all very familiar with. This is Venice. It could be other cities, but this is Venice. What I want to, and of course, you see that this is creeping in other places as well. What I want to mention here is that the Taj Mahal, for instance, brings 20% of the tourist revenues to the state of Uttar Pradesh, where it's located. And Uttar Pradesh has many, many other very important historic areas, but 20% of the state's revenue from tourism comes from the Taj Mahal. In order to curb the tourism levels, the state has tried many things, including at times there was even an attempt by some officials to drop the Taj Mahal from being mentioned within the souvenir books in an effort to curb tourism, so that by not mentioning the Taj Mahal, perhaps some tourists might be discouraged from visiting it. But I think it's important to recall here what really we are talking about in terms of heritage, and what is it that it means to be World Heritage. Heritage is our legacy from the past, what we live with today and what we pass on to future generations. Our cultural and natural heritage are irreplaceable sources of life and inspiration, and they are our touchstones, our points of reference, our identity. And what makes the concept of World Heritage exceptional is its universal application. World Heritage sites belong to all the people of the world, irrespective of the territory in which they are located. This becomes very interesting, particularly when we start to look at how the management of the properties are taken forward, because it is, of course, something that the cities, sites, the site managers, the cities are responsible for, the local communities are impacted by, but they're also something that the global community, as we saw in the case of Notre Dame, for instance, very recently, are very, very mobilized by. And this is important to always remember, because sometimes cities or sites are surprised by why the rest of the world is so worried about exactly what is happening on the site. So what does it really mean when we talk about outstanding universal value? We've seen this mentioned many times, and many of you who are managing World Heritage cities are very, very cognizant of this, the real meaning of outstanding universal value. But just to recall it, what is it, as others before me today have mentioned, what is it about heritage that we are protecting? World Heritage sites are identified for an outstanding universal value, which that could be cultural or that might have cultural or natural significance, which is so exceptional as to transcend national boundaries and to be of common importance for present and future generations of all humanity. And as such, the permanent protection of this heritage is of the highest importance to the national community as a whole. The committee, the World Heritage Committee, defines various criteria for the inscription of the properties on the World Heritage List. So these are the criteria, and the OUV is what we have to protect. And that's what gives the real definition of what is important about that property. Now, every property also has a property boundary. And this is particularly important in a city because sometimes these boundaries, you know, when you have a monument, you might have sort of fencing around it. Not that that is a recommended way necessarily at all, but there might be ways to demarcate what that monument is. But in the case of a city, very often these boundaries are not very well identified. And local people might not realize where the boundaries are. And we certainly find that when we go to visit a city, a historic city, a World Heritage city, whether a particular structure is inside the property or outside the property is often not very clear to the many of the people involved. Now, why does this matter? This matters a lot because the way the World Heritage property and the OUV is maintained, the OUV is really within the boundaries of the property. Outside the boundaries is another area, which is the buffer zone. And the buffer zone you might think of as an additional layer of protection for the OUV. So and there could be other elements that could come up outside of the buffer zone that could impact the OUV of the property, but in general, that becomes less and less. So if you have suddenly a very horizontal city and a very tall structure that comes up outside of the buffer zone, that could still have a visual impact on the OUV. So this is a very important aspect to keep in mind because where the new constructions happen, where the infrastructure for tourism is developed, what the OUV is and how that is maintained is the fundamental sort of aspect of a historic city that is important for tourism, because this is what you want to be, this is why tourists are coming to see the city, and this is what you want to be presenting to the tourists. So you can have OUV of a variety of, it's not that, this is not, World Heritage is not a beauty contest. So they're not all, you know, these sites are not here because they're beautiful sites. Certainly many of them are indeed very beautiful sites. But as you know very well, there are a number of sites here, sites on the World Heritage List that are sometimes deeply disturbing in their history, that they are commemorating. Their OUV lie in the difficult histories that we have. And this is also an aspect that that I will talk about a little bit more going forward. But as I said, being able to see that variety and being able to identify that OUV and present it to the visitors to the site, and making sure that that OUV is enhanced and not diminished in whatever types of development, presentation, tourism management that happens, is a very critical element. Now, in relation to this, I want to bring up the historic urban landscape recommendation, which some people have talked about today, and I had mentioned also in my speech yesterday, which is a recommendation that was agreed upon by all the member states of UNESCO, which is 193 member states. The recommendation was adopted in 2011 by the General Conference of UNESCO. The idea was that it's a holistic approach to integrating the goals of urban heritage conservation with sustainable urban development, of socioeconomic development, and it sees the idea of heritage as something that could be valuable, a valuable resource for social and economic development of cities. So it means that it's really a way by which contemporary needs of socioeconomic development can be balanced with heritage conservation, how they can be integrated together. So some of the points that were being raised this morning, for example, where Liverpool, there was a very, Mr. Fleming was talking about the idea of the mayors and the people of Liverpool saying that there's no, we need jobs and we need to maintain heritage. Well, these are not in conflict with each other. The whole idea is to be able to find solutions that work together, and that's what this, the historic landscape approach is about. So it's an additional tool to integrate policies and practices of conservation of the built environment to the wider goals of urban development in respect of the inherited values and traditions in different cultural contexts. So you could talk about it as a sort of a soft law. Convention is an obligation once the country ratifies it. A recommendation is a soft law to be implemented by the member states on a voluntary basis. So the idea of the historic urban landscape is that there is layering within the city, where, depending on how long the history of that city has been, it could go back to several thousand years of continuous habitation, and you might find layers. And the layers might be those that are buried underneath and therefore are then put up, made visible, or they could be layers in the different periods of buildings that you see along the same street. There might be, and that is telling the story of the city. Sometimes many sites feel that they want to fix the identity of a city or a place or a site to have a very coherent single identity of a particular period. Now that's actually contrary to the idea that we want to be able to show the layers of history, and that richness is really and sometimes there are unpleasant histories that are part of it, but that's part of the story of the city, how one overcomes some of these unpleasant histories or deals with it. There's also the geographical setting. So if it's by a water, by a mountainside, at the bottom of a mountain, in a valley, these are many cities that are located in a kind of a bowl. These particularities of the geography are very important to the identity of that city. And that's what it means by a larger setting. It doesn't mean that you put larger and larger boundaries. Sometimes people talk about the historic urban landscape as a place, a type of, it's a landscape. No, it's really an approach. It's a way of looking at a city in its larger setting, understanding its many layers. So it's a complex way of looking at a city, because cities are complex animals. as you all know, as you manage cities, that they are very complicated. So that's really what this is about. So how can we connect this idea of looking at the organization of the city, the spatial organization, the land use patterns, the hydrology, the morphology, the social cultural practices and values? How can we connect this with tourism, as we've been talking, with sustainable tourism? Well, just to sort of give you very quickly a few points. First of all, one can start by looking at heritage as being at the heart of urban development. So considering heritage at the heart of development, urban development means that you're looking at not just buildings as monuments separately, you're looking at it as something that can be seen all together, and that the management plans, which every World Heritage Site is required to make, prepare over a period of time and adopt, is integrated with the urban development plan. Very often, these are two completely separate documents then prepared by completely separate groups of people who've never talked to each other, never sat around a table together. And that's really critical, that they do sit around a table together, and we bring them to sit together, and that the tourism development happens with the urban management plan, with the heritage management plan. So considering, I'm running through this quickly, I think my timing went off already. So considering the site in its largest setting, in its natural geography, taking pride in the layers of history over time, which I already talked about, prioritizing local communities, local jobs, and small businesses, include tourism in the overall development plan, prioritizing visual integrity and identity, which I talked about, if it's a horizontal city, if it has certain type of skyline, being able to figure out this identity, improving the infrastructure and housing for the local people. So it's being able to balance this kind of a global OUV with the very local needs and aspirations. Improving public spaces, maximizing experience, maximizing pedestrian opportunities, so looking at mobility. The number of cities that run into problems because of mobility is very large. We see a lot of problems around metro lines that are going too close to certain important sites. We have the cable cars. We have all sorts of different things that we see. Intangible cultural heritage elements, several of you have talked about today, and I think that's very critical also in being able to make meaningful spaces, meaningful sites. And ensuring inclusive and participatory processes. This is very critical. I'm going to skip over some of these slides now. You can look at this book, which is on our website, the whole guidebook, which is a slim guidebook that you can find on our website. And Bordeaux, we already heard about today, so I'm going to skip over. And Cuenca also was part of our discussion earlier this morning, so I'm going to skip over. And I just want to show you the tourist reality a little bit more, to say why planning needs to happen together with heritage management, so that once we decide that this is the OUV, you don't end up putting tourist buses at the very entrance when the most important views are completely masked by either unplanned urban development or tourist buses or hotels that disrupt the skyline. Views of the ocean, the bay. This is Georgetown, or this is in Macau, and the heights of buildings, the control over the heights of buildings, so that what is really valuable in the heritage site, the heritage city, needs to always be kept at the forefront of the planning, and that's the point that I'm trying to make. This is again the Taj Mahal. I'm showing you views that are not the standard views that you would see in picture postcards, but in fact these are the views that you would see if you went to the site, because that's what's happening all around. These places are sitting in the heart of urban areas. And this is Lijiang, which can also, making a historic city into a theme park or something that's very, very perfect, sometimes too perfect, fixed in time, is also not a real story. So it's being able to keep the OUV, the authenticity of the city, and maintaining its OUV. This is the Jamal Fna in Marrakesh in Morocco, which is completely alive with all sorts of intangible cultural heritage. Cordoba in Spain, which has these festivals of flowers, which is a very important intangible heritage element that gives it a great deal of life. And the meaning that building has for people. This is in Mali, where after the tombs were demolished, this is the rebuilding that is happening in Mali, and the people, local people, are very much involved in the rebuilding, and so their participation was critical. And the idea that you cannot really have meaningful places and experiences unless people do what is meaningful for them, the local people, because if it's meaningful for the local communities, then it's meaningful and rich for the visitors. So you can't create a theme park only for the visitors. It has to be real for the local people for it to be rich and meaningful for others. So developing and managing access then is part of this. I just want to leave you with the website of our World Heritage Cities program. That is one of the 6 thematic programs that you can find on the World Heritage Center website. And you can also find this manual on New Life for Historic Cities that is also on the World Heritage Center website, and point you to the new urban agenda for sustainable development. I briefly mentioned the goal 11 of the 2030 agenda. The new urban agenda was adopted also by all countries and is an obligation for all cities. And so being able to look at how heritage can contribute to the new urban agenda and help achieve the 2030 goals with heritage rather than against it by demolishing it, I think is very critical, because heritage, cultural heritage, can be a transversal resource for achieving not only the conservation of heritage, but for decent jobs, for youth empowerment, for gender equality across the board. So with that, I'm going to stop and listen to some of the cities and their experiences and their approaches. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Jyoti. Thank you. Please have a seat and join us. I really hope we can get to some discussion afterwards, because I had so many questions while you were speaking.